really appreciating all the presentation. I really think there are enormous amount of creative, enormous amount of process, also showing that the society or the unconformist society is absolutely something that we all taken over, and this is all about unconformity. I think, first of all, I'm a urban designer and a planner. I work in this university for already 16 years. I came from Chile, South America, so for me, the issue of informality, concept related, was part of our daily system. And this is also the reason why I ended into planning studies. Basically, because the key issue that I saw at every single confronted society that we have in the southern world is expressing a very, very complex condition, and there's no way that the current models existing can really give an answer. So using creativity, what is our key common aspect, and by a lot of work and experience, this has been my motto for many years. I try to see different kind of way, but absolutely agree with Laura, connecting with the formal establishment. So I'm going to invite you to a little bit of a review on the concept. I know there's a kind of allergy on that, but very much I would like to invite you to think in the concepts as translating of different type of life, different type of approaches. So as much as the concept of informality is apprehended by yourself and trying to understand how the people live within this, now the concept became a little bit more useful and particularly can help us to find a way out. So first, the big image saying that the global south, which it's the area that I belong, mainly the study that I've been working to, in the United Habitat Planning, saying the amount of inhabitants living in informal settlements, and particularly in poor settlements, is going to reach in 2020 that 6 of our 10 in urban inhabitants are going to live in poverty. And this is a key issue, and also that the informal economy is going to reach in 2050 60% in the global south. So this is a reality, and it's a very concrete reality, and that is why putting in this university, and particularly under the chair of spatial planning that invited to do this, we need to take it over. This is, of course, a kind of raising issue that not just Delft, but many universities in the Netherlands and in Europe have been considered enormously. We have students from everywhere in the Netherlands in this. And this is also something that the university have considered enormously. I'm part of a new network which is calling the TU Delft Global, which is an horizontal platform with all the faculties defining the importance of the new perspective coming from the global world. So this is the starting point and the urgent issue that we need to tackle. Many images that you know from Veratuca to some other friends in Mexico, Buenos Aires and Hong Kong. So what we are going to say that this kind of contrasted development, and very much between the formal and informal, are a key expression that we can find worldwide. And this is the first. I would like to invite in the presentation to revise some kind of understanding on what is the urban informality, what are the key criteria to consider within it, in order to try to sketch as a kind of models of a way out where the planning, the design, and the participatory integration can reach a new kind of approach that in a way can give concrete answers and can integrate many initiatives as the one that we have here with the big and the heavy shark of the neoliberal model that are defining and contrasting these all aspects. So I start with one of our good friends and good master, Manuel Castell's definition of informality, that in a way create for this presentation as a kind of hypothesis that we're going to try to reinforce through the different processes. Starting by the concept of informality, which is a process in the making, which is a constant dichotomy between the formal and informal frameworks that are changing. So it's not something that you can define individually or specifically, have expression, but it's the dichotomy on the way that actually the urban space is. So coming from that understanding, we need to understand that this shifting between the relation of the formal
or the informal, or let's say the structure or the unstructured, need and to have a kind of framework to understand it, which is why it's a contextual framework. So every single city and every single society express different dichotomy. Why? Because it's very much a kind of product of historical circumstances. It's not simple, it's not the same, because it's dynamic and shifting. But we're going to try to reveal a little bit one of the key elements that this dynamic relationship have determining today the constructed image that we have, but also it's the way that we need to address it, understanding this issue, a process in making, a constant dynamic process. So we come into a certain specificity that Manuel defined, that is understanding this from the informal economy, basically. Economy as a social system of exchange and production of goods and services. So from that kind of issue, we need to understand that we're talking about survival strategies when we're talking about extremely poor. But if we think that this is 60% of the economy in the global south, what are we talking about? We're talking about one system that needs to be recognized, and that's where we're trying to declare as a kind of context or an approach to understand it. But this is, and this is more very, very much Manuel, this is a result, have a causality on a social definition of the state intervention. That is a social construction. These kind of rules are part of our own definition. And this state, the way that the state intervene or define the rules, is a relation that we are all co-constructing. So that is why it's an opening. And that is why I would like to see this as an opening, as a kind of layout. But let's go to a little bit of the concrete issues. How we understand urban informality or informalization is of how it's expressed. So we're talking about one, the most clear planning expression, the illegalities of it. Two clear issues, the land ownership and the land uses and the urban regulations. This is clear, the most obvious expression on the dynamic between the formal and informal in the urban sector. But also, this is creating not just an issue of informality in the poor sector or in the... It's very much present, and for Latin America we know, the informality, and particularly informality of land uses and regulation, it's also had been taken from many very rich areas. In Argentina, 40% of the gated communities that are expressed in the area for the high rich are under concrete against the formal land uses and against every kind of regulation. But we're going to refer to the poor or the weakest groups of the society, where the expression of formalization is an economical condition. And the key factor of analysis that I invite you to is the income. Income, as Nora Klichevsky, one of the key authors in Latin America in relation to the informality, defined is the way to think. And if we link this income, economical income, with the proposal of Manuel Castells, we start searching and taking a position. But we also have another expression, which is the spatial and the infrastructure conditions that are there. When we're talking about this spatial and infrastructure condition, we need to talk about how we see that. Many of the presentation today talking about what? Improving the quality of housing. So, improving the services. Improving the condition of overcrowding, density as a key factor that we need to think. Key factor because, as was clearly shown before, density show, the density in the formal settlement shows that this is a reaction because of the lack of institutionalization, because of the lack of reaction, because we still do not have this accessible housing, for affordable housing, because it's actually something that we as a society, in a way, do not properly act. We react and always very close. We're also talking about the settlement location. This is very much the risk area that Laura has been talking about. This is very interesting because when we're talking about that the localization of the informal settlement tend to be always in risk areas or in stagnated areas. Meaning what? Meaning that the location of the reaction of the informal area tend to be already in a part of the urban tissue that are not connected, that have no functional connection in the way that the city has. So this is a more clear issue that we need to think. But we also need to think that this expression is clarifying that the way that our system, urban system that today is expressed in a metropolitan concept, Randstad, is really much at something that is expressed as a failing concept by the institution, but as a reaction of the large majority of the world inhabitant, as a really way to say this is another system. So this is the dichotomy that I would like to say. I would like to come back a little bit to the historical phenomena. We said that this is also have a socio-historical factors. This is why. Because it's expressed between this dichotomy between the historical issues and the characterization of the different urban processes. That if we believe in this or we understand this, we're also saying that each of these phenomena is different in the different contexts. When we're talking about the developing world, we're talking about a kind of society that do not reach an institutional maturity to react to this. So that's why the expression tend to be higher. So that is a little bit what we say. But I would like to invite you to think on these factors in the current development of the southern world, even that in a way we are generalizing. You know? But how we see this? First, we see this emerging metropolitan urban structure, the way that these cities are connected. Please again use the ones that are the most, the clear model. All the cities have diversity of function, collaborate and function, and in a way exchange. Now this is happening, but this is happening in a very particular way, and it's a very selective function of development. Well, as Saskia Sassin pointed out, this kind of global model is very much a model that includes 0.05 of the people of the world. And this is actually the key driving model that we have. So in a way, and it's selective. We are not all invited. No, we are of creative class. We tend to be invited. The reaction of the large majority of the audience is, no, we are going to counteract this. We have my side work, I'm going to develop housing, but rich housing. But this is something that many of us neglect. And this is important for us to think, because this is the way that is expressed, and this is the way that has certain scale. Second scale, the human structure. And in the human structure, in the global south, we have extremely constructed functional networks. That is why. Now the key expression is the gated communities. Now complete closed systems of housing that in a way are taken out of the normal relation that we have. Making what? Making that the human tissue, where we believe is one of the key elements as an urbanist to think about it, is completely neglected. Even the life of the people, like creating microsystems, that in a way create, of course, a complete different way of this. So, a second step. And the third step, in the local expression, and this is very much what Roman was saying, when we really even think on this, the informal settlement in itself, well, the informal settlement also, because of this, let's say, constructed survival strategy, is an extremely fragmented space and have an enormous difference. So that is also creating a complete, we're talking about defensive system. This is what Saskia Sassi put it in a different way. So they're creating enormous complexity on how to understand this. So what we said is very much that we need to think on this relation that is coming from all this expression and translate it to that, translate it to the scale that the urban system is involved in. Metropolitan system, urban system, local system. But we also need to think that the context of development of each of these, the actors involved, are changing. And this is why, again, we have a little bit way out. So, we have that informality from the first definition. It's a state of being informal, a state of not complying with the regulation. But it's very much, as Castell said, a process. So we need to think on the causality of this process. The causality had been changed from a model that was very concentric model, very concentric economy, where the countries or the economical system of the society were closed, and then the migration process, the rural migration, create the first step of this informality, and is expressed in a dichotomy between the center and the periphery. But it had been changed. It had been changed because of the globalization, open a complete different world that defined another kind of networks. So then, now we have based, particularly in the new division of labor, a complete different model where the different areas react different to the economy and have a different value and role. And it's in this new condition where the fragmented space, as we understand, as the informal settlement, tend to do not even have possibilities to connect. When we're talking about the socio-spatial fragmentation and the expression of it, we're talking about there's no relation. And in the photos that we see at the beginning, the very rich, high creative services society with the very poor, except in a very tiny way as the laundry that you were presenting, do not even have relation. Why? Because basically the model that we are thinking is contrasted. So we're also thinking in two factors that I'm going to insist in here. Is this neoliberal characterization of the urban development where the big actors are now external investors using the city for capital accumulation. But this is not just the issue of invited, it's an strategic issue, but it's also defining another level, which is this new division of labor, thinking about the 60% of the economy, which determines the level of humanization of employment. That is one. Basically, the key factors that we are talking about is that this economy needs and requires and a structure, and a metropolitan structure, a urban and a local structure that need to be considered. That is the challenge. So for that, we have certain kind of possibilities. I'm going to jump because I'm very pleased with time. Of course, the responses, because of the model the neoliberal model had reduced the state capacity for reaction. This also meaning that the level of communication between the different units of the government or the governance structure tend to be answered very short. These have an enormous implication in the slum upgrading program that very much in the large majority have been an in situ issue. One-time intervention, as was also shown by Rohan, with the basic infinite of the shelter, as Laura said, first demand, but stamp urbanism, a model that actually do not consider or assess the people demand. So that is the key thing. So these peculiarities have no consideration of the particularities of the assessment of the poor inhabitant. This is the key thing. And then we translate it to the 60% of the economy. So that meaning our survival strategy as a society is not structured in the urban form that need to be responsive. Also, that the value of the urban structure as a base for social economic opportunity tend and have been related to the higher actors, large urban infrastructure level, the richest of the richest, the logistic of the economy, and not with the basically need that we need to consider. So also what we're saying, there is no platform continuity. This is very much to responding on whatever we do in relation to the transformation need to have a continuity, and that is why the institutionalization of these factors need to create a co-constructed city where the opportunities or the interventions that was beautifully presented today need to have a continuity. As much as we empower the people, as much as we need to care and a certain institutionalization in order to go forward to this kind of thing. So, what we search, this is human habitat, this is World Bank, so the search for a cohesive responding condition of the human space is neglected. So, I'm not going to have time to go to the model, but at least the goal is to use what we have and improve it. It's not a revolution, it's a transformation, it's a progressive transformation. So the goal is to search for a strategic way where the opportunities for development need to have a common ground. And this common ground is the human space, the structure that we need to think. We have been going from the sidewalk to the key structure. Well, that is the key line. So we need to say that the assessment of the urban poor and demand specifically need to be addressed, but also as an opportunity, also as potentialities. The local economy have an enormous potentiality. The expression that it has is such that it is inevitable that we need to adapt that level. We need to also consider the demands and the capacity, I would say, towards a co-construction of common consensus within a broader stakeholder arrangement. We need to consider their investment, their large investment, but we also need to consider how those elements can really be able to integrate at the local level. What Jack was saying is exactly this line. So what we urge to create is a platform for the durability through time, where the key issue of the daily system of survival and the logistics system of the global economy can meet and is possible to be met. So, well, I think I'm going to try here because otherwise But what we have, and then in the lectures you have, it's a complete list of this kind of approach that had been studied. We have since I run a unit that work very much on the developing aspect, and we have already from the 9 years 27 master theses who talk about this kind of development. In the presentation, you have at least 2 that show how this model has been translated to a condition in Brazil and another condition in Buenos Aires that can be a little bit of misunderstanding.